Removing a high court judge, that's one of the most serious constitutional processes we have in India. It's rare, it's always politically charged, and it really pushes the boundaries between the judiciary and the legislature. So what happens when a judge who's on the verge of being impeached decides to fight back by taking his own case to the Supreme Court? Well, that's exactly what we're breaking down today.
All right, to really get our heads around this landmark case, we're going to tackle it a little differently. We'll start right at the end, with the Supreme Court's final decision. Then, we'll rewind to see how this whole thing kicked off. After that, we'll dive into the core legal arguments, pick apart the court's reasoning, and finally explore why this one ruling is so important for India's entire constitutional framework.
So let's jump straight to the climax of this whole legal drama. We're in January 2026, and the Supreme Court of India is about to deliver a ruling that sends ripples through the system and gets the impeachment process rolling once again.
And it all really boils down to this one powerful sentence. With these few words, the court just cut through all the complex legal arguments and gave a clear, direct thumbs up to the parliamentary procedure that was being challenged. This line is absolutely crucial because it demolishes the judge's main argument and reinforces the authority of Parliament's leadership.
So what was this all about?
Well, Justice Yashwant Varma of the Allahabad High Court went to the Supreme Court and basically said, hey, you need to stop this investigation into me. The committee looking into the allegations, it's illegal. But the court's answer? A very firm no. They decided the investigation was totally legitimate and gave it the green right to continue.
Okay, so that's the final verdict. But how on earth did we even get to this point? To really get the weight of that Supreme Court decision, we've got to hit rewind. What were the allegations that put a sitting high court judge on the path to impeachment in the first place? This whole story really plays out over several months. It all started with a fire back in March 2025, an incident that would trigger an internal judicial inquiry. By August, that inquiry was given the go-ahead, and before the year was out, things escalated all the way to Parliament, with impeachment motions. And all of that led right up to the January 2026 Supreme Court showdown we're talking about now. And this is the incident that started it all. The spark that lit the fire, you could say, both literally and figuratively. The whole controversy exploded after allegations that burnt cash was found at Justice Varma's home in Delhi after a fire. A claim that serious obviously triggered an internal investigation by the judiciary, which then snowballed into a matter for Parliament. Now we're getting to the real heart of the legal argument. And here's the fascinating part. This case wasn't really about the allegations themselves. It was all about procedure. It was a major clash over how to correctly interpret the law that tells you how to investigate a judge for misconduct. And everything hinged on this one law, the Judges' Inquiry Act. You can think of it as the official rule book for how you go about removing a judge. The entire legal battle pretty much revolved around what one specific section of this act actually means. So this is where the two sides really clashed. On one hand, you have Justice Varma's lawyers. They argued that you can only create an inquiry committee after the impeachment motions are accepted by both houses of Parliament. They saw it as a joint process. But the Lok Sabha Speaker had a totally different take. Their position was, as soon as a motion is admitted in my house, I have the authority to get an investigation started. And Justice Varma didn't stop there. He added another twist to his argument. He highlighted the fact that the motion in the Rajya Sabha, the upper house, wasn't even admitted. He claimed the official who made that call, the deputy chairman, didn't actually have the power to do so. He said the action was ultra-virus, which is just a legal way of saying it was beyond his legal authority. So you've got these two totally opposite views on how parliamentary power works. How did the Supreme Court untangle this mess and land on its final judgment? Let's break down exactly what they said. And wow, the verdict was basically a clean sweep. The court came back and said, 1, the Lok Sabha Speaker was perfectly within their rights. 2, there were no procedural mistakes in how the committee was formed. 3, that means Justice Varma wasn't going to get the relief he was asking for. And 4, ultimately, this was a matter for Parliament, and it wasn't the court's place to interfere. And this quote, I think, really gets to the heart of how the court was thinking. They saw their job here as a delicate balancing act. On one side, you have the rights of the judge who's being accused, but on the other, you have the constitutional right of members of Parliament to hold judges accountable. For the court to step in, they felt, would have tipped that balance. So why does any of this matter beyond this one case? Well, this decision is huge. It's going to be studied for years.
because it really clarifies the rules of the game between two of India's most powerful institutions, Parliament and the judiciary. So, what's the big takeaway here? This ruling sets a major precedent. The Supreme Court has now basically said that the Speaker of the Lok Sabha doesn't have to wait for the Rajya Sabha. If an impeachment motion is admitted in their House, they have the full authority to set up an inquiry committee and get the ball rolling. This is for sure going to shape any impeachment proceedings in the future. And all of this leaves us with a really big fundamental question, doesn't it? This case perfectly captures that tension at the heart of any democracy. You need a process strong enough to hold judges accountable, but you also need to protect them and their independence from being targeted for purely political reasons. This ruling just redrew a very important part of that delicate line.